everyone. I'm Darcy Bachgard here with our weekly web chat, our final October chat about coding in the classroom. And this was a last minute change, but I met Abby earlier this week and immediately went, you have to share these resources with teachers. So we're going to jump in and talk about some amazing free coding resources that you have available for North Dakota teachers. But first, why don't you introduce yourself, Abby?
Hello, I'm Abby Ebach at the North Dakota State Library on the Capitol grounds of Bismarck. I'm a library development specialist, which means me and my office in library development, we work with teachers and librarians all around the state to provide different resources and help build them up in any way we can.
And I love that phrasing of build them up, because when I looked at your list of resources, these resources would be a great testing ground for teachers if you want to try something, if you want to dabble in coding in your classroom, but you don't have the resources to just buy a whole bunch of Spiros or Osmos or Bbots or all of these other really cool coding robots and coding gizmos, as well as a whole bunch of STEAM resources. You could dip your toes in and try out a few things for free by checking them out through the library. Can you tell us a little bit, like, how are you able to provide these things for us for free?
Well, part of it is, like, that's the nature of the state library, and so we get funding from the legislature. But primarily what we're talking about today is through our partnership with the Grand Forks Air Force Base School Liaison Office and the Air Force STEM program. The Grand Forks Air Force Base got a grant and called us up and said, like, hey, we got a grant for a bunch of like STEM education stuff, and you guys already have like a system in place to distribute this throughout the state. Will you help us out? And we said, we'd love to. Please give us money and we'll buy things with it.
And we'll buy toys so that
exactly.
can play with them.
So they all came. We got all the robots delivered to our office early this winter, and it was like Christmas in February. And we've slowly been working our way through going all of these robots, and we are learning how they work so that we're able to answer questions about them, and then putting together essentially like programming or like a very, very minimal curriculum for them. And I think our last ones were actually just put on up to date, so they should all be available, I believe.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've been teasing people enough that I just want to show them where they are. So as you come to our lovely resource packet here, if you're watching the video of this, the resource packet is in the description. So you might need to click on the show more, but the link to this packet is in the description. So we've got all the coding goodies here. And if you are new to coding, we've talked about this in a different chat, but code.org is a great entry point to get yourself and your students acclimated to the language of coding. And as I shared before, I'll be honest, Abby, you might not like me after I say this, but I was very skeptical about why teachers would teach coding in the classroom. And then the more I've learned about it, it's just become, it's so obvious to me now. Like, I'm embarrassed that I ever had that limited perspective. But in my head, coding was ones and zeros and writing lines of code. And I wasn't really sure how that was going to help all kids. But the coding that we're going to talk about with the robots and the STEM kits that you can check out from the North Dakota State Library and the things that are on code.org, it's all about problem solving and kids having to figure out problems. And by having to code this robot to go through a maze or to have to accomplish a certain task, it really helps kids think sequentially, to problem solve, and really strategize with each other. So maybe try starting with your kids at code.org. Jumping to the robots might be a little tough, but that's just my biased opinion of where to start. And as a high school English teacher, whatever. All of this is to help folks gear up to participate in the hour of code coming up in December. And so hopefully by planting some of these seeds now, you have a month to continue to plan, maybe to check out some of these robots, and to get something set up in your classroom for that hour of code. Okay, so the library, you told us about the Air Force Base, 53 different educational kits. And this is for K-12, like you have a whole range of stuff, right?
Yes, and I brought some of our goodies that were still on the shelf. So I brought like the K through 2 and then some more advanced ones as well, just to kind of show off, because I like to show off the things.
Well, and it's easier to see what the potential in these things when you can see them working. So this is going to load a little bit. We've been having, my Wi-Fi connection particularly has been a little slow and funky as we were starting today. So Abby put together this very clear list that walks you through the kits, the robots, like the description of them. So where do you want to go? What do you want to brag on? Or, you know, what do you have that you can show us?
Well, first I just kind of want to explain the spreadsheet a little bit.
Sure.
Not because like people can't read, but just it helps orient.
Yeah.
So let's take the Airblock kit.
Okay.
I happen to have it with me. But so the Airblock is essentially a drone that breaks apart when it hits things, because we used to have a drone and it broke when it ran into a tree.
Of course.
So we did our research and we found a safer, it's essentially foam robot. But so number of kits, 3. So that means there are 4 robots in each kit, and we have 3 of those kits. So like Airblock kit 1, kit 2, and kit 3. So when you reserve a kit, if you reserve kit number 1, you get 4 robots in the mail.
And could a teacher reserve 2 kits of one thing if they were available, or would you prefer that kits stay available for other teachers?
It's really up to them. We do have a limitation of 3 kits at a time.
Okay.
And then I think the trick is actually going to be availability. If you can find 2 of the same kit available at the same time, great, do it. Jump on it. You can reserve up to a year in advance.
What a gift that is too, of if we're planning something. So if you maybe can't do something right now, you can go through this list and you could be planning right now for something that you want to try in May or even next fall that you want to start doing some of this coding in the classroom.
Yes. So that is one of the perks of our system, is that it isn't first come, first serve. So you log on, and we'll show that in a bit, to reserve this kit, and you get it for 8 weeks if the people before you returned it on time. That's our only caveat.
We should all be good citizens for each other and return things on time. But even that 8 weeks, that gives you as a teacher a couple weeks to play with it before you're having to do it with kids.
Yes, and what's really fun, and so when the kids come back, they come to our office, and we've each like adopted certain robots.
Yeah.
And so we each like make sure it's okay, and like, you know, that it wasn't broken or attacked or anything, and that all the parts are there, because parts go missing, we get that.
Sure.
And so as we're going through it, we have a stats sheet in there that we need to keep as a part of this grant. And in the comments, and we get to see what people are doing with these. So we had a Boy Scout troop playing with Cosmos, which is this little guy.
He's cute.
He is probably one of our top robots. He was booked out for a full year in October, with like maybe a few month gaps in there, which is really great. But so they were playing with him, and so a Boy Scout troop had him, and then the next group to get him was an English classroom, and she just kept them for like when they were done with whatever their homework assignment was for that day. If they still had time in class, they could pull out their device, connect with Cosmo, and code with him and play with him. Because Cosmo has like a bunch of different levels. He has like the Tamagotchi level of like play with him and feed him and tap his cubes and he'll fist bump you. And then he has like simple and advanced coding games as well. So he is one of our most diverse robots.
I really like that suggestion of this would be something if you could get for a couple of weeks. And if you as a teacher are still a little nervous about coding, and I'm not saying that was the case for this English teacher, what a great thing that she did just to be innovative in her classroom, or he. But I like that suggestion that if you are a little nervous about this, maybe just rent out one for that 8 weeks. And you wouldn't have to use it in your classroom. Allow the students who are curious and want to play with it, allow them to learn how to play with it, and then let them teach it to the other kids if you want to use it. I find that there are so many tech things that my students do a lot faster and easier and just smoother than what I would do. So I like that idea of why not, and set it in the back of the classroom for 3-4 weeks. You've got it for 8. Let a couple kids figure it out, and then have, you know, a couple of weeks where they're teaching in small groups, different kids, how to use the robot.
Yes, because we don't just loan these out to teachers, we also loan them out to public libraries. And a lot of our librarians are very, very, very afraid of this new technology, and it's scary, and they don't want to break it because then they're financially responsible for it.
Yeah, it scares me.
Like, so you get this kit of like 6 robots, and we say, just put one out. And when somebody you trust comes in, say, do you want to try this? And it's like the gateway drug to robots and STEM.
In a good way. This is a good gateway. And I think of some of my kids, and there are kids like this in every classroom who don't really have their thing. I think one of the things that's exciting to me about the idea of coding in general is that it might not be the traditional smart kids who are good at coding. So I like that it offers other kids an opportunity to shine, and it would allow those other kids who are more hands-on learners and who might think a little bit more creatively or dynamically, and they might not be the kids who are always right in class and are always answering questions, but this gives them an in of something to get excited about. And hopefully it is a gateway drug. Wouldn't that be great if this gave those kids a joyous moment in class where they're excited about learning and doing, and that could start to trickle over into some of the other things that they're doing in the classroom.
And what we really like about these kits is that they're tactile. You can touch them and see what they're doing. It's not just practicing your coding on a screen and seeing it react on there, which is really cool. But instead, you're seeing this robot in real life. Our Dash and Dot kits, which I know a lot of people are familiar with, they interact with each other. And if you have like 2 of the dashes and 2 of the dots talking to they start talking to each other and interacting with each other. And it's really cool to see that. And you don't need to have a coding brain to appreciate that that's happening.
Yeah. What other kits do you have that you could show us a little bit? That was cute just to get to see Cosmo.
So Cosmo's my baby. He's the one that I adopted. Like, they brought him in and I screamed dibs and I took all 18 of him and put him on my desk and we played a good long time. So this is my Cosmo. Let me see here. So here's the Airblock that I talked about right away. I didn't pull this one out, mostly because it's larger. But as you can see, these are each like foam rings that break apart. And then you can also turn it into a hovercraft.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I don't think I've mentioned, or maybe I did, that so these all come in with a folder with like a how to like quick start guide.
Great.
So here's how to connect them to your device.
Like me, yeah. So someone like me who has never used one of these, you've provided me some steps.
Yes, and I did not bring one of my folders down, which is sad, but.
Well, that's fine. So whether I want to try it or whether I want to say, here, Janie, you take this robot and here are some instructions and you give it a go. That's really cool.
So I actually, each of the Cosmos, this isn't like his full thing, but each of the Cosmos and each thing have, so the quick start guide, like here's the app, and then here's what to do. The red print is really just like absurd things that I found out while playing with him to make your life easier, and then Wi-Fi tips.
That's fantastic. And that's another column to pay attention to on this spreadsheet, that everything is denoted of what type of device that you need to have. And so, you know, like the Airblock that we were just talking about, a tablet, a smartphone, so an iPhone or an Android, but note of what year it has to be, or, you know, the version that it has to be. But in addition, and Abby and I were talking about this on Monday, there are several little codables that don't require devices. And if you don't have, if you're like, well, I don't have tech, so I can't do coding, here you go. There are several devices that you don't need a separate device in order to code.
Yeah, and you actually have highlighted the Code and Go robot mouse. I have him right here. So this is Colby. He's like, he's not our youngest kid. He's really cute, right? He's just a little mouse with these buttons on the top. And so what you do is, I'm going to close this box. Colby, you put together mazes. And then you code him by pushing the buttons on his back for him to find the cheese. So
that's cute.
Yeah, so it comes with different maze orientations, like pre-designed. And then there are little cards with each arrow on. So like my 5-year-old nephew just did this a couple weeks ago, because I take it home to be like, let's make sure a 5-year-old can do this.
Yeah.
And so he lays out orange, blue, yellow, whatever. And to get through the maze.
They're working on their colors. They're working on their directions. They're working on counting, because they have to count through how many forward steps does the mouse need to take before it turns left. And then they're counting out how many of these, the next steps that they have to move forward before they turn, so that it can eat the mice, not eat the mice, so it can eat the cheese. That would be a very different and very creepy game if the mice were cannibals in addition. So I'm glad that I
would not promote that.
Yeah, I don't know that I would do that. I wasn't familiar with the Code and Go robot mouse, but that's very similar. It works very similar to another little robot called a bee-bot. And the bee-bots are just shaped like bees, but they have very similar buttons in terms of you code right on the robot. And so the robot is self-contained. You don't need other devices to practice that sequencing.
Yeah, which is really convenient.
Probably we're talking, like for something like the robot mouse, even when you just look at it, probably that K-2 age range is probably where you are looking that a slightly older kid might get pretty bored with the mouse pretty quickly.
Although he does have a hyper mode where he just drives around the table like crazy. So
that's kind of fun.
Like that was pretty fun, just to let him go in our office.
See what happens.
Yeah. And then, so my last show and tell, because almost all of ours are off the shelf right now, is I brought the Cubelets that you and I were talking about earlier this week. So the Cubelets are a bunch of blocks, essentially. And each block is pre-coded to what it does. So I should have actually constructed something, but I can do it while we're talking.
Yeah, and then you can just talk us through what a kid would do if they were using the Cubelets.
Yes, so everything starts with the blue battery little block, and then let's see here. So if I connect it to, the black one has a knob on it, so I connect the battery to the knob. And then I think this one's the light. Let's find out. So I turn it on.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and if I don't like the sound effects, I can instead switch to, I don't know what that one does.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah, so I think this
is
is the whole flashlight.
Ooh,
So,
that's pretty bright.
yeah. And so, and then, so if we stay with the flashlight and the battery and get rid of our knob, we can switch to, there's a little, I'm looking at the cheat sheet that tells me what everything is. So this one is a sensor. So as I get closer and further away,
the light is dimming.
Yeah.
So this is a nice, that's a beautiful kit for experimentation of just looking at different ways to run different simple machines. Mm-hmm. That could be a really nice addition to any makerspace time that teachers might have built into their day, or if you have a dedicated, that 20% genius hour of letting kids explore and create and see what they can come up with. That would be a nice addition to that space.
Yeah, because there's everything from so there's little wheels on the bottom if you want to make them drive. Some of them have Lego pieces attached to the top so you can build up. And just every single cube is pre-programmed to do something different. So it's just experimentation and fun and see what this does. And it's no device required. And it's fun from your younger ages. I think, what's our minimum age that we recommend on at 6? To older, because my husband and I played with this in our kitchen for like an hour. Because we have a lot of fun with robots.
Well, and there's just so much. I like that this, like that one is really just about experimenting. So that one is less about coding something specific, but experimenting and trial and error and just seeing what do different combinations of blocks do and what is the potential, like what could you create with all of these different things.
And I mean, you say it's not coding, but if you take your most simple block coding, that's what we're doing. We're saying, turn it on, turn the knob, the light goes on. Like that's still your sequential thinking.
You're right. And you're right. If we're thinking that coding really is about helping kids think about sequences and problem solving, that's absolutely coding.
And they're all magnetic, so they're just really easy to put away.
And also handy. And I also like that they're not super tiny. It looked like they were, you know, like they're a decent size.
Yeah.
A little bit harder to lose something like that than like little tiny pieces that if they're pretty self-contained, they can snap together nicely. Yes. We got to look at a few of those kits. Are there any others that you want to just tell us about?
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of go down the list to some of my favorites.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can read it at your leisure. So the fuel cell car is another no device needed one that's really great for science classrooms. It's essentially you pour distilled water into 2 cylinders, and then it uses a fuel cell to convert it into energy to drive the car.
Very cool.
Yes, and so that it comes with a solar panel, or you can use batteries, but it's essentially a lesson in renewable energy. We have the giant Polydron kit, which is essentially just like those really giant, like plastic Lego looking things, which I know a lot of librarians enjoy for like a construction story time.
That's a great idea of like build a story and actually construct the pieces and then
you build the house or or your city or whatever.
I like when people are thinking about this. Like I said, I was like, why would people teach coding? And then the more I've learned about this, and I learned about PBS Scratch Junior, and you and I were talking about that on Monday, And I love that the Scratch Junior, like what you're talking about with this Polydron kit, you could build it into a lot of storytelling activities. And so now the kids are having to problem solve, they're having to think sequentially, they're having to think spatially, they're having to think in different ways. But you could also tie it right into, all right, like we're learning about, conflict in a story, and we're learning about setting, or we're learning about all of these things, and you could create it into this thing that the kids have to do. You could even do something like that with the mouse, that if you've read a story and a story character, if we're thinking about younger kids, of putting events in a story in order, of what if you printed off some pictures of those different events and the mouse had to go through the story in the right order, and the kids had to code, so the kids would have to lay out the story in a certain way and then get the mouse to travel through the story on an adventure. I think that's I like that they're just making all of that storytelling and learning visual.
Mm-hmm. A few other kits. So the MakeBlock Starter Robot Kit is definitely one of our more advanced kits. That's another one I adopted, and it made me bang my head against a table, but it got better. Essentially, that is a robot that there are coding components, but essentially it's building. So you get all of the pieces and you screw it together, and you take the wires and you need to plug them into the correct components in order to make this car run.
So now we're talking a lot about circuitry. We're talking about the physics of connections and all of those things.
And that one has a lot of troubleshooting in it, because if you are plugging in your wire into the wrong thing, you could short it, sure, but essentially you're just robots going to run.
Sure.
And so it's switching your wires, and it's that more complex thinking of how can I make this work? How can I fix it and tweak it to make it run the way I want it to run? The first time I put it together, it just ran backwards instead of forwards. It happens.
It does. And we've talked a fair amount on these different chats about the need to help encourage kids to cultivate a growth mindset, that it's not that you can't do it right now. It's not that you can't do it. It's that you can't do it right now. You can't do it yet. And I think all of these kits, like the way you just described that's also a great lesson in growth mindset of, well, all right, so you have a problem. That doesn't mean it's over and it's done. Like, problem solve, figure it out. What are you going to do? And if you keep trying, your robot's going to work. You just have to keep tweaking and keep fixing. And the more you practice and the more you do, you're going to be successful.
Yes. The Cuba maze is a giant marble maze that you can construct.
Nice.
As long as the kids are old enough not to eat the marbles, you can make it. Robot Wars just went up today. That one is a board game that teaches coding, so that's good for starting like your second, third grade range. It's a 2 to 4 player game that just works pretty simply. The Rolly is the only kit we don't have out yet. It's coming. Okay. That one's actually really fun. It's essentially a music synthesizer. And then
all of these, like everyone you describe, I'm like, I want to check that out.
Hey, if you're in Bismarck, we'll see what's on the shelf.
No kidding.
And then I want to look at the telescope and then our 2 NASA at My Library kits. So another partnership we made was with NASA at My Library, which was through the Space Science Institute. And so we're essentially a part of like, I don't know, a cohort or like a trial group. And so they sent us these NASA at My Library kits, and they are incredibly comprehensive. Like, think you're like big, giant, like what you store your Christmas decoration totes in. Yeah. Chock full of like 5 to 10, 15 different activities, and like a giant binder of curriculum. Like, you can tell I didn't put this together. Like, people
Someone from
put
NASA.
a lot of effort into this. Yeah, like it's NASA at my library. We get to say NASA and not be kidding. So those two kits especially, there are activities in them for all ages. I'm most familiar with the Sun, Earth, Moon Connections kit. So that one has things like Jump to Jupiter, which is, it comes with like incredibly scaled down planet sizes. So like the sun is a pomegranate, and then we have like sea salt and sand and these different things that represent the different planets.
To start thinking in scale.
And then you like lay them all out in the hallway, and you have to see how many jumps does it take to get from the Earth to Jupiter or from Jupiter to the sun. And
I like that. That's a cool, I like anything that helps us bring different classrooms, because that could be a fun cross-curricular, like why not partner with the gym teacher and actually have something like this set up that the kids actually have to do.
Yes, and so these kits, I mean, you can see, I think we should talk about Kit Keeper next, but when we get to Kit Keeper, it gives you like an incredibly lengthy list of everything that's in there, but there's truly any activity you can imagine with like very, very direct instructions on how to run these. The Be a NASA Detective, we have a webinar coming up on that in mid-November.
Great.
If people are interested, you can find it on the State Library webpage and sign up for it.
Okay.
Casual plug there. But Brianne will be going through that kit pretty step by step to talk about it. We also have our telescopes that we got through the Grand Forks Air Force Base. You only get one telescope per kit, but it's the tabletop one. And so like, we joke that we can spy on the governor from our office. It's meant to look at the sky.
But, you know.
Yeah, whatever.
If it's sitting on a table. It's just out.
Yes. So our space-themed ones have proven very, very popular for teachers and public librarians and Lego clubs.
Oh, sure.
Because so there's some Lego national organization whose theme is space this year, and then the public library summer reading programs for this upcoming summer is space themed as well. So it's a big space year.
But that's very exciting. And it's exciting to me that all of you, have tested these things, you've played with them, you kind of know, you're hearing from different teachers and from different kiddos who are using these things and seeing what they're excited about. And it just blows my mind that these are all available to check out for free.
Yes. So the only cost to anybody to check them out is that they need to get back to Bismarck at the end of your 8 weeks. We ship them to you for free. You keep them for 8 weeks. You need to figure out how to get them back to us. So whether that's shipping it, you need to absorb that cost, or if you're coming to Bismarck between 8 and 5 Monday through Friday, you can give it to us.
Sure. So someone could drop it off in person or, right. But for that length of time and for what you're getting for that kit, that shipping cost is pretty minimal compared to that investment.
It really depends on the kit, how much it weighs. And if that's something you have a lot of concern about, you can contact us and ask what the weight is. Or the
get an estimate on what that shipping is going to be. But still, I like that this allows teachers, because all too frequently I felt like you either just have to get it, you have to buy it, and you're investing this money. This is a lovely way to test something out, to try a couple different kits, see what clicks with your students in your particular age range, see what clicks and fits well with your curriculum. So try out a couple different kits. And then once you've found something that really does work, then maybe you can start the process of purchasing something for your classroom. Or if you want more, right, you could still always reserve the library's kit, but maybe you also have a classroom kit. So you have, for part of the year, you have 6 in your classroom, but then when you get the library bump up, you have a couple months where you would have 12. And now you almost have 2 devices per, 2 kids per device. And you could accomplish a lot of different activities and adventures coding through that.
Yes.
We talked about the reservation system, and that's here. That's the Kit Keeper kits reservation. And it does say in your instructions that a library media specialist needs to check this out, needs to check out the kits. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the thing is that when we first debuted these, we said, if you're a teacher, great, reserve it. And we got inundated with names of people that we don't know. And so we were like scouring the internet to try and find out where these people were teaching and where we're supposed to be sending them. And so it gives us one point of contact at a school. Because if there are 4 teachers at a school trying to reserve a kit, that's a mess for us just logistically. So it gives us one person at a school to contact. And then we can hopefully establish a relationship with them, or already have an established relationship with them through other library means.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. So you're going to talk to the librarian. I still think it's helpful for teachers. So again, this is just the full list. You can also click it here, the full list. Because in addition to those 53 STEM kits, you can see all of the other kits that they also have available. So in addition to all of those STEM kits, and I'm just slowly scrolling through here so that people can see, so you can see all the STEM once you get down to STEM. This is where all those robots are, of where you can start doing that. But check out all of these other resources. There are tons of book sets. And do most of as I scanned through here, it looked like most of the book sets have 10 books.
Yes.
Does that sound accurate?
Yes. They all come with 10, and then like a book club discussion guide. And then you can also sort by, like, if you're more interested in young adults, you can filter out the adult titles as well. But that's not saying that some adult titles aren't appropriate for like high schoolers.
Exactly. So
that's on you.
So if you go, so I just clicked on for this when I'm at the Kit Keeper. I wanted to see all, because I saw her Abby's note that there were 53 STEM kits, and then I saw this number and I went, what else do they have? So when you go to that, you get to see all of the kits with a description. So if you know you want to look at the codables and the STEM resources, this spreadsheet is a much easier resource. Find what you want, look through here. But in addition to that, I told Abby I would feel guilty as an English teacher if I didn't tell other people, if you're looking for some additional books, if you want to try some lit circles in your classroom, if you want to try a few different texts. But again, you're out of money for the year. I think this is a really cool way to bring in a couple lit circles or some different books. And I was just really excited that this resource exists. And you said other larger libraries in the state may also have a lit circle collections like this.
Yeah, so I know Bismarck and Dickinson for sure have them. But I know some other larger libraries have them. I just don't happen to know them off the top of my head.
But even that, just planting that seed, those ideas of, I felt like as a teacher that I spent my own money on a fair amount of stuff in my classroom, and to a point, I'm okay with that. And I get it, everybody's strapped, and we do what we can because we love our kids. But if you can find some of these resources for free, you know, I taught at West Fargo, so I was very fortunate that we had a very well curated library. The librarian there, Jane Holland, was just amazing. But this would be a really helpful resource if you maybe don't have a fully stocked library, or you've run out of money and you want to try another book or two. I like that challenge of seeing what's going. You can also search, it looks like you can select what month you're looking at. So, if you're thinking, well, let's say December, like let's say that you were looking to do something for Hour of Code, you can also just filter down and see what kits are available for that type of year.
Yeah, so you need to click on the exact day and then go rogue from there.
And so now you have these lists. So on December 5th, for part of the Hour of Code, you would have these STEM options still available for that day.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be another way, like if you kind of have a target month or day range that you're thinking, I really want to do something coding at this time of year. I thought that was a very handy and teacher-friendly way to break it down of just when do you want to reserve something before you go through that hassle.
Yes. I also want to just back up to the book club kits for a second.
Sure.
They do have the same rules as the STEM kits with your 8-week checkout. You pay to get them back to us. And I think we'd also prefer you go through your library media specialist for those.
Yeah.
But then we also do, if you have a book in mind that you don't have enough copies of, you can contact your school or your library media specialist and talk about interlibrary loan options. And so they talk to our office and we can get you as many copies in the state, not as we can, I think we cap it out at 10.
Okay.
But if there are other copies in libraries around the state, we can interlibrary loan them to you.
See, librarians are basically just wizards, and all too frequently we don't ask them to wizard for us. So let your school media specialist, let your librarian help you save money, save time, and get more resources into your classrooms. So to me, that's the main takeaway of our conversation today. Like, just go cozy up to your library media specialist.
They don't bite, probably. I don't know all of them.
Yeah. Find out what some of these things are available. And my thing is going bonkers there. And just take advantage of some of those. I didn't think about that resource too of there have been times where I was teaching a book, and if we had a slightly larger group of students from one year to the next, or had maybe lost a couple of books because of damage or actual physical loss, I have run into situations where I'm short like 5-6 books. And that's a really good resource to know that a quick email through my library media specialist to the North Dakota State Library, I could probably get some of those books. Because I've literally sent emails to the staff and posted on Facebook like, hey, I need more copies of Lord of the Flies. Does anyone have one at home that you're willing to let a child read? Yeah.
This is probably a time to say, I work primarily with public libraries.
Okay.
Your local public library is also able to interlibrary loan. And if that's something your school librarian is uncomfortable with or hasn't done before, your local public library would also be willing to do that for you if they already have that practice in place.
Another great tip. Okay. So that is just one of the things that the North Dakota State Library can do for you, can do for your kids, can help you bring coding into your classroom, or all of those different STEM activities. If you don't want to call it coding, this really ticks a lot of those STEM curricular goals and objectives as well. But we also want to talk just a little bit, if you are interested in cultivating this idea of coding in your school, that there are some really great free curriculum resources that you can use to help establish Girls Who Code. So what do we need to know about Girls Who Code in general?
So Girls Who Code is a completely free coding club that could be run by anybody, a teacher, a parent, a librarian, a volunteer.
Okay.
18 plus, essentially, that's willing to host a weekly coding club. They don't need any prior knowledge. You get the curriculum completely free through Girls Who Code. So it has a curriculum for 3rd through 5th grade, and that club is essentially set up like a book club. So they will send you as many copies of the book as you want, and then gives you a week by week guide and questions and activities for what to do with that club.
Oh,
And then
cool.
so 3rd through 5th grade does not require any sort of computer technology access. It can be done completely offline, but it does have the option to be taken on a computer as well and do the activities that way. Excuse me. The 6th through 12th grade club is more advanced and is focused on working together to solve essentially a problem that you see. So whether it's, oh goodness, they have so many lists of examples that I can't think of one right now. I know they've designed various apps to help schedule different things in their community. So it's just, and it walks them through the process from beginning to end, using different coding principles and teaching the various different types of code. So Java or Scratch or whatever kind of base that they would like to work in. And they're very tied into working together as a group and cultivating teamwork. And again, you get that curriculum completely for free through Girls Who Code. I don't think I explained that very well, but if you have questions, I promise I can answer them.
And a lot of the information, if you do have basic questions about what is required or what does this look like, the information is all hyperlinked in the resource doc. So you can check out what the 3rd through 5th grade curriculum and what that coding information looks like. There are some samples here. Again, apologies for the slow-ish internet connection today, but you can see the general curriculum overview just by looking through this guide of what are your objectives. And what I do think is pretty cool about this program is, yes, it's still about coding and problem solving, but if you look, all of the top things that are bolded, this is also a lot about empowerment and helping girls be confident as learners and problem solvers, and helping just give them the tools so that they can be ready to tackle any challenges, whether it's coding related or not. So it feels, yes, it's called Girls Who Code, but the mission in general feels deeper than that. Is that a fair?
It's really true. And they focus on Girls Who Code because of the discrepancy in education and the lack of females in these STEM careers and in different coding professions are very limited. And so they want to increase that interest in a really safe environment where girls can learn together and get excited about this together without being worried about any sort of, I don't know, judgment passed on them for enjoying it.
Yeah. And so these are resources. You've got 3rd through 5th grade, 6th through 12th grade. In a previous chat, we already talked about the fact that PBS Learning Media has resources for PBS Scratch Junior coding clubs. And those can be run similar to what Abby just shared, that a teacher wouldn't have to run one of these clubs. This could be run by a college student, by a teacher who's training, by a parent, by an older sibling, someone who's older than 18, and that, you know, passes whatever kind of background checks or whatever your school district or your library needs to have for staff people and volunteers. And that's similar to the PBS Scratch Junior. There are camps that my colleagues have hosted where they're coding workshops for parents with their kids. And then the parents and the kids are learning coding together. So in this one slide deck, if you are interested in learning more about how to integrate coding, there are resources K to 12 of things that are going on. One more thing, and this isn't through the North Dakota State Library, but I felt ridiculous. I would feel silly to not mention it. EdTech, which is our statewide tech support for teachers. If you don't know about EdTech already, they do a lot of different technology training. They are hosting a series of code.org workshops, so you can see the dates and the locations there. But it is a free one-day workshop that will prepare teachers to teach computer science fundamentals. And so this would be something that you can add on to your licensure. So this would be more appropriate, I believe, for elementary educators and support staff. So it says it right there in the description. So I was going to make a general statement, but it just tells me who it is for. So if you are interested in learning more about coding, they're coming up quick around the corner, but I encourage you to check out one of these free training workshops. The links to register for each individual location is there in the resource doc on this slide. So that is a lot of free resources and training available for North Dakota teachers if you're wanting to step up your coding or your STEM game in your classroom. Anything else that you want to add? I'm ridiculously excited right now. And it's very silly because this isn't what I teach. But I find it just really exciting that you are helping bring these tools to more kids in the state.
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. And there's been a lot of research that STEM and coding education hasn't reached a lot of rural areas in the United States. And if you look at North Dakota, like Bismarck and Fargo are the only places that are not classified as rural in the entire state.
Right.
So it's really important to try them and to not be afraid necessarily of the technology, because it can be fun and it doesn't have to start with big, powerful, crazy things. It can be as simple as putting together blocks and seeing if you can get the flashlight to turn on.
And as simple, like you said, it can be as simple as have a couple devices sitting in the back of your classroom and extend the invitation to those students that you trust or would be interested as part of, extra time or free time, and have them learn how to do it. It's interesting to me because I feel this is very true of me in my teaching profession. Frequently, I stop myself from trying something because I'm afraid it's not going to work, or I'm afraid of how it's going to go, or I want to get it perfect before I do it with students. And I think about then how I expect my students, like when I talk to them about writing, I'm like, you just need to try it. Like, right, you got to draft, you've got to explore. And so I have completely different expectations when I think about how free and open and draft focused and process focused that I want my students to be, and how I want them to be thinking about, every failure is just a new evidence, is more evidence of what doesn't work, and now you just try again. That's the mindset that I want my students to have. Mm-hmm. And all too frequently, I prevent myself from having that same mindset because I'm afraid of something not working.
Yeah, and if your students don't see you struggle, they're not going to be comfortable struggling.
Exactly. It's so counterintuitive on every single level. And so these free resources exist for checkout. You're not out any money to try them, and slips them in subtle, small ways. I think, Abby, your suggestion, it doesn't have to be a big, huge project. You don't have to make this the focus of anything. Just dabble and see what works. And slowly, as you test and you figure out which of these things work with your class, with your students, I think it could be pretty amazing of where and how this could grow in a classroom. Mm-hmm. And you're available to help, like if I was absolutely in panic mode and I was like, I have no idea what to do, I could call you.
Yes, I'd recommend calling the state library, just like general number.
Yeah.
But yes, we're here to help. We've tried to compile as many resources as possible, but if you're really in a lurch with Cosmo, like, yeah, call me. I got you.
Yeah, she's got your back.
Yeah.
She's got resources. So yeah, let these library wizards just mix some magic in your classroom. And I guess if I have one goal from this whole coding series that we've done here in October, is just to help people think about different ways to bring more ideas into the classroom to help kids be problem solvers, to be creative thinkers, to expand how they're approaching problem solving, and to just continue to demonstrate, as Abby just said, continue to demonstrate that we as teachers are also learners. And so we're continuing to learn new things. And that's why learning is so exciting. Like, that's why school could be so exciting, because we get to continue to learn new things. So learn with your kiddos and, you know, take a chance. And I'm very excited that these things are available for North Dakota teachers.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share them with all of you.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today, Abby, and taking time out of your schedule to highlight these resources and to demo some of them even for us. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you just have nothing on your shelf for the rest of the year. All right, we'll see you guys next time on our Prairie Public Weekly Web Chats.